I think just starting with knowing that you want something different, knowing that it's possible that you can get there, but you're not going to get there in one giant leap. You have to just follow one tiny little ounce of courage at a time.
Hello there, it's Mandy Woodard, and this is Courageous Conversations. The show is all about our life journey and the growing and healing we go through. Sometimes it takes great courage to step out of where we are and choose a different path. I started this show because I wanted you to know that you are not alone, no matter where you are in your life journey. And my hope is that you will hear a story that I share or a conversation that I have, and you will get something out of it. You will have an aha moment or a realization, and you'll know what you need to do, because it is my belief that we are all here to help each other grow and become the best version of ourselves and find what our purpose is. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Let's get started. Well, hello there. How are you doing? Welcome to episode 31. It is June 13th on the day that this goes live. And I am so excited for you to hear this interview/conversation. It was more of a conversation. I think if you've been here for a little while, you know I don't really do interviews. I'm more interested in a conversation and hearing people's stories. And the goal is always to share something that might help you in your healing journey. And today's guest, her name is Alex. I know Alex from Instagram. She is so funny. I love following her. I am going to drop her handle in the show notes so that you can go give her a follow too. But she actually really had some amazing things to say. And she was so vulnerable. I'm honored that she would come on here and be as vulnerable as she was. She talked to me about her childhood. We talked about her divorce, her healing journey through the divorce, and even before then. She talked about her kids and parenting through such a thing. So really good stuff. And I don't feel the need to say another word. I'm going to go ahead and just let you listen to this conversation. So here you go, my courageous conversation with Alex Sumner. Alex, thank you so much for agreeing to come on here and share with me, because I have followed you and admired you from afar for a very long time.
That, Mandy.
It's almost like embarrassing how much I've watched and just loved on you and not even messaged you. I don't know that I always message. I think I reply to you a lot, but probably not near as much as I could.
Oh, my palms are literally like, can you see that? They're like sweating right now.
No.
Look at my armpit.
Why?
Thanks. I don't know. It's just really sweet. That's really sweet.
Oh, but you are such a creative human, and I am drawn to you with that and everything that you've done. So you've been a photographer, you work with this new company now, you've been on this healing journey, you have 2 kids, you have recently gone through a divorce, and now you're a single mom, and that's really deepened your healing journey. And I just thought I have to have her come and share about her story, because I just know that it's going to be impactful for even one person. I think it could be impactful. So I would love to begin with you telling us a little bit about where you are and what you're currently doing. Do we want to start there? Let's start there.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, I'm really appreciative, and I just feel really honored and like excited that you asked me to come on here. I love that you said that, something can help even just one person, because I just love what you're doing in general and just how many people that you're affecting, probably not even realizing it and, sharing your stories and other people's stories and, just helping people to think differently and relate to one another. I think it's awesome. And so where I'm in Tennessee, and I am currently a marketing assistant for a sewing company. And so I just work behind the scenes with their social media there. And then I've run my photography business since 2012 is when I officially opened it, I guess. And I still do that on the side here and there. And I don't know, I also plan Disney vacations. Um, just because why not? And then I have a podcast about Clarksville, specifically for people wanting to know things about Clarksville, that's been a whole lot of fun. But yeah, I do things here and there, little whatever brings me joy in that season of life, I guess. And then sometimes I'll just move on to the next thing, but that's where I am now.
I forgot about the Disney stuff. I did just see you were there recently. That's so funny. But do you know what I have? The question is do you accept that this is who you are, that you are going to be moving all over the place and doing all kinds of things? Or do you get stuck on the idea of like, why can't I just focus on one thing and do this?
I used to get stuck on the idea of, because for the longest time, I felt like I was almost irresponsible in switching paths in my life. I felt like, because in my family, everybody's got to have one little black sheep of the family. That was me. Or I feel like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like we all feel like we're the black sheep of the family. But, I did come from a family where everybody, we've got people in the medical field and they're all very responsible. And, and here's Alex just kind of all over the place. I mean, I got married at 18 and then I had all these different jobs and I still can't pick one thing to stick to. I don't have a college degree, things like that. And I did beat myself up over it for the longest time. But recently I've realized that I think me finding the things that bring me joy and going after them is just because I am a life enthusiast. And I know it's so cliche to say you could die tomorrow, but it's so true. And I think about being an old woman all the time and knowing that there's going to be a day where my energy isn't as much as it is right now, or, the things that I want, they're going to change. Everything that we want in life is it's fluid, it's constantly changing. So why not go after what I want right now? Because a year from now, I may not want it anymore, but I'll always think about it. So I don't feel so guilty anymore going after those things. And, whether I'm successful in them or not doesn't matter to me, because I can always find one of my favorite things to say is everything is figure outable. And
I say that too.
Yes. And if I end up jumping into something and I don't succeed, it's not the end of the world. I'm not going to die right then and there because I didn't succeed at it. I can always transition into something new that is either more successful or brings me more joy, but I'm at least going to start with what I'm interested in. And I'm finally at peace with that.
That's so great. I'm glad to hear that, because we will beat ourselves up. Like, why am I starting over again? But it's like, no, you're just following the path. And it's okay if your path is like unfolding in all these different directions all the time. That's okay. And I don't know your human design. I don't know if you've seen what I've shared about human design, but I could guess your design very easily, because Manny Gens start and stop a lot of different things. And I feel like that's probably what you are.
So I've heard about that, and I looked into it at one point, and then I forgot about that until you just brought it up. So what was that? What was that name again?
It's a manifesting generator would be the type.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Do you know what your type is?
No.
Do you remember?
No.
We'll have to talk.
No.
You'll have to tell me later your information. Because I could be wrong. But it sounds like you could be that with the bounce around energy.
Now I'm interested. I want to know more. So
So you've been on this phenomenal healing journey. And so maybe it's just the way I interpret it, but it feels so deep when you share just words that pour out of you with these beautiful photographs of yourself. It feels so deep and profound and like it could easily fall into the pages of a book. But I
Mhm.
would love to hear about that. Like, how did you even begin? And yeah, how did you even begin starting this journey? Have you always been, I don't know, because like I look back and it's like, when did it really seriously begin? But also, haven't I always been searching to feel better? Like we always just want to feel good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you know where to go with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, you know, I mean, my personal, I guess, healing journey or just the journey of being at peace with myself and my own life kind of began very early on, again kind of going back to that black sheep of the family feeling. And I had always, from little on, I had always processed my feelings in writing or in creating something. It always felt the most me because I felt like I just didn't accept myself on the outside, if that makes sense, around other
Yeah.
people and just, whatever group that I was in or within my family. I mean, my family absolutely loves me, but I think that we are our own worst critic and we just naturally think that we don't belong where we are. And so I think that I was one person on the outside to people, but whatever I felt on the inside, I wrote about it or created. And that was just how I processed who I was. And, growing up, I think that was probably the biggest theme of my life is not trusting myself enough with the life that I was living.
Mm,
And I always felt like I needed, and I didn't know this at the time until recently, but I always felt like I needed somebody to tell me that I was on the right track, that my personality was okay, that my career choice was okay, that my friends were okay. And I didn't trust myself enough. And so that eventually led me into making the decision to get married at 18. I was actually still in high school. I hadn't even graduated yet, but my husband at the time, we started dating when I was 16. He let me be who I was for just kind of the whole of me. I felt very comfortable. I felt very loved in a weird way, not in the healthiest way because I'll be completely honest, our relationship was very unhealthy, and I don't put all the blame on him. I'll get that into that in a minute. I think it was definitely both of us seeking our own needs. And so for myself, he was somebody who did kind of direct my life. And, he was very authoritative. And I felt very comfortable in just handing my life over to him. And, you know, I got married so young because that was what I was seeking. And so I was ready to give it all to this one person. But it ended up being the theme of my life where something still just didn't feel right growing into my adult years. And I felt like, I was this I don't really know how to put into words, but I just felt like I wasn't living my life.
yeah. Well, somebody
And
else was telling you how to live it.
yeah. And so, I think that was something that I had just constantly tried to grow from, but didn't know how. I wasn't even really self-aware enough of what was going on. I just knew that a puzzle piece wasn't fitting. And ultimately, the biggest part of my healing journey and where I finally kind of came out, the way that I describe it is I think I lived in like a bubble. And the day that my bubble popped and I could like see outside of the bubble was when I finally decided to get out of that marriage and heal the things inside of me that started from little on that
Yeah.
I realized that another person could not fix inside of me. And I really needed to fix inside of myself. And so that's where it really began. It was just kind of passing as I grew up, and then the bubble popped, and
Yeah.
here
Yeah. And how long ago did the bubble pop?
the bubble popped 2 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it takes quite a bit of bravery to say, it's time for me to go now.
Mm.
And so getting to that point, how did you get to that point to say, okay, it's time to be done?
It was, so I'll say that it starts in baby steps. I think that when
Mm,
you hear these transformational stories of people, you think that, you know, somebody's life changes in an instant or one giant brave moment.
hmm
But looking back, I think that I could always envision where I wanted to be, how I wanted to feel in my life. And I think that that's why I felt so far away from where I am now, because I thought there's no way that I could become that person or live that life because it's so far. And so instead, and I didn't even realize that I was doing this at the time, but it starts with baby steps and knowing just one small change that you have to make at a time.
Yeah.
And, you might envision what you want in your life, but you have to start with where you are now. And so the first step that I took was knowing that, okay, I'm unhappy, something has to change, but I have no idea what. So my first step will to see a therapist. And that therapist then led me into learning about codependency and other things. And then that led me down, to going way back into what does codependency even mean? How is it showing up for me right now? Where did it first begin? And it was just a series of tiny little baby steps. And when I felt just the smallest amount of courage to leave my marriage, it's not like I just left and then everything was different. I
Right.
actually left and then would go back, leave, go back, leave, go back. And I actually left our marriage multiple times. We were together for 13 years and I left multiple times over that decade. And then I officially left 2 years ago, but my heart kept racing back. And then I kept telling myself, no, the life that you want isn't there. I don't know how to get to where I want to get, but I know it's not going back that way. And that's all I needed to know in that moment. So it was just taking another baby step forward, maybe a couple baby steps back, one baby step forward. And I think just starting with knowing that you want something different, knowing that it's possible that you can get there, but you're not going to get there in one giant leap. You have to just follow one tiny little ounce of courage at a time.
Yeah. I love that you said that. I don't know. That's so people need to hear that
Mm.
because we think so much that we have to take massive action and move quick and do this and that's how you're going to change your life. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it is a split second of a big huge choice,
Yeah.
but usually not. Usually it's in those finite baby steps.
Yeah.
And as a life coach, the way I was coached, I went through Tony Robbins and he is always very, and I love him. He's helped me
Yeah.
change my life many times over, but it's very much take that massive action, take that massive action. But when I'm
Hmm.
sitting with clients, no, that's
Yeah.
not, that doesn't feel good. It's like,
Right.
let's just start by waking up and drinking water instead of coffee, like something so little
Yeah.
that then spills over into how you handle your relationships. But it's got to
Hmm.
start with that little piece. So I love that you just shared all of that because you don't have to take this massive, scary leap all the time. What's
Hmm.
one thing that you can do right now to help yourself feel better? And
Yeah.
then the next thing, and then the next thing. And the next thing you know, you've got this whole path unfolded in front of you.
Hmm.
So when you did leave, did you have a weight lift? Like when you knew, okay, this is the last time and I'm really not going back.
Yeah. Um, I did actually, and that was one of the things that pushed me through because it's like, your head and your heart battle each other. And when I did, I was like, okay, this, I don't know why, but this feels right. And then when I would take those steps going backwards in the opposite direction, it I would do so because that was what was comfortable. But there was something that I realized a few months later when, I kept doing that little dance of, going back and forth. I realized that comfort does not equal good.
Yeah.
And, just because something is familiar to you or normal to you, it doesn't mean that it's right or that it's best for you. Even if something is good for you, it doesn't mean that it's the best thing for you. And yeah, so following those little nudges of making a decision and feeling in my body that this actually feels right, even if it's scary. If it's scary, that doesn't mean it's wrong. That doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
But you kind of align with it is the best way that I can describe it. And I just kept following those nudges. And if it felt wrong in my body, not scary and, good or bad or right and wrong, I mean, are different feelings, I think. But yeah, that's what helped me. And also when what we talked about just a second ago, and one of the things that helped me in just growing in general is I would look back at the past 10, 20 years of my life and realize obviously that me, you, all of us, we're not where we were 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even a year ago. And we don't even really mean to do that. We just kind of naturally grow.
Yeah.
And, going back to the baby steps versus the massive step is when you think about the fact that you have ended up in, the good, successful, healed part of your life, you've ended up here just naturally along the course in tiny little baby steps that you weren't even aware of. And I had this thought where, if I can grow this much while I'm in a bubble, because even though I was in a toxic relationship, even though I was disconnected from myself, I was still growing. And then my bubble popped and it grew exponentially. So I had this thought that if I can grow even while in a bubble and not even meaning to, imagine how you can grow baby step at a time with intention. If
Mm.
you're intentional, still small chunks, but being intentional about where you want to go. And I think that that's really what kind of skyrocketed the next steps in where I was going.
Yeah. And where is it that you want to go? Do you know where you're going?
Right now in this moment, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think all the time, one of my favorite things that I had heard once, and I think about all the time when I'm trying to make a decision is what does my what would my future self do in this situation, the most healed version of me. And I think that about that all the time when I get stuck in a decision or even a feeling, because one of my biggest things that I struggle with is just overthinking and letting myself go down a spiral, and then that keeps me stuck in wherever I'm at. And so I know for sure that the type of woman that I want to be in the future, that I'm really aiming for, is somebody that doesn't overthink to the point of staying stuck in my life and just
Yeah.
making a decision. And, whether it's right or wrong, that it doesn't, I don't need to know that right now. That will unfold. And if it ends up being
Mhm.
the wrong decision, I can course correct and I can make a different decision. And just, I want to be able to be a woman that is confident in my ability to make decisions, whether that's as a parent, whether that's in dating, whether that's, in my career, or just what I do today, what I want to eat for lunch, big or small. I just want to be a woman that is so present in my life that I don't have to give a second thought to what I'm thinking about, so that I can spend more of that energy just enjoying and just being and just living basically. And so that's the type of person that I'm aiming to be.
I love it. I love it because, oh, now I have a question about childhood though.
Okay.
But let me just say that I love it because you're right. Well, to me, I always say there are no wrong paths. There are no wrong paths. You're just by being, you will be exactly where you're supposed to be. And if you find that you are not happy where you are, I'm sure there were lessons there. There's always a silver lining. There's always something to learn, but shift. Don't be afraid to shift and make a different decision, to go down a different path. Don't beat yourself up like, oh, I have to stay here. And actually, so often I think what happens is, well, I've been married for 20 years. Why would I leave now? It's too late. Like my life. I have had older people come in through the office. When I say older, I don't think they're old. They think they're old. I'm talking in their 60s, where it's like, it's too late for me to start. What? Who told you that? Just because you've been in this space for so long, it doesn't mean you have to stay there. You don't have to stay committed there. And it's that fear of quitting, quote unquote, or having to shift that they're making the wrong decision. There are no wrong decisions. There are no wrong paths. And Oprah said this, and I always have it playing in my head. There are no wrong paths. There are no wrong marriages. There are no wrong jobs. Every path is meant to lead you back to your destiny. And so I love that you just said that, because you're very much right. Well, I agree with you anyway, is that you can change your damn mind. It's
Yeah.
okay to change your mind.
Yeah.
And you can change your beliefs. You can literally change anything you want about yourself.
Mhm.
My question is, though, what the theme that I've heard is, with your marriage, you wanted to be able to have somebody say, like, this is what we're going to do. This is how it's going to go. Was it like that in childhood? Was somebody always making decisions for you?
Yeah, definitely. So my mom was also a single mom. And I have to give a shout out to her because she was absolutely amazing. And I did not see it when I was growing up. I definitely had this selfish mindset of wanting something different than what she was able to give me. And I didn't
Yeah.
realize. And one of the ways that she wanted to do right by me was by, uh, in a sense, telling me what I should do, who I should be friends with. And I was extremely fortunate in she put me in a lot of different things like dance and softball, theater, music lessons. I was constantly doing something. And I, as I grew older, I think that she really wanted me to be successful in all that I did, but also all who I was. And starting, when I was just a little kid, I was always very quirky. And, I went through that normal punk rock or gothic stage. I went through that and I had my geeky era, and I struggled at making friends that were quote unquote cool, or the popular kids. And I definitely never started off that way. And my mom tried really hard to swing me in the path of being accepted by the majority of people. And so in middle school and high school, she had me join the cheerleading squad, and she had thrown out my black clothing for pink preppy clothing. And she was like, this is the way that you should be, or you're going to die alone, basically. I'm exaggerating. It wasn't like that. But
Right. No, I get it.
yeah. So she tried really, really hard to put me on this path of acceptance.
Yeah.
And that eventually, she didn't intend for this. Her intentions
Right.
were really good and really beautiful, but it left this impression of me that who I naturally wasn't good enough. And it
Right.
was who I should be to fit in with society, which whole other topic I think is just a bunch of hogwash. And so I definitely struggled with, going back to not knowing how to trust myself and my decisions, and going all the way down to something as small as the clothing that I wanted to wear. And so it was very, very natural for me for somebody else to direct my life, because I felt like if I directed it, I don't know where I'm going to end up. And it was terrifying to me. And so when I got married, I took things very, very deeply. If I wore something that was a little quirky, or that I knew deep down was me, and my husband at the time, he would make these jokes. I would laugh about it, and I still laugh about it, but I took it really deeply. And he would say, oh, that looks like something a grandma would wear, or just these little comments.
Yeah.
But because it was such a wound from my childhood that I didn't even realize was a wound, I took it to heart. And so I think that was, just a big part of when I left my divorce, left my marriage. It became kind of a big thing where I was like, wow, it's like taking off a giant coat that you've worn during summer and winter and fall and all these different seasons. And all of a sudden you're like naked, and you're like, what am I? Who am I? And so for the past couple of years, up until recently, let me tell you, I look like, you know what a baby giraffe looks like after it's born and it's just wobbling around out there? That was me. I didn't know what I was doing. It was rough. I feel like I say this all the time, that I need to send an apology letter to anybody that I dated, to my friends who stuck with me.
No,
Let me just apologize. The
no
little
apologies.
girl, it was rough. But
No
we're in different
apologies.
places. But yeah, anyway, but yeah, in a
No,
nutshell.
that was so perfect. It's great to share these things because our parents try so hard, but it can still be to our detriment.
Mhm.
Like, all your mom wanted was for you to feel accepted by your peers, but you can see what can happen on the other end. Like, if we love them too much, almost is what it
Mhm.
almost is. And I know I've done this to my kids. My mom did this to me also in a way that I don't even know if I've ever shared it with her to say, but we had to leave the house looking nice. Like, she did not condone us wearing sweatpants to school or anything like that. She wanted us to dress nice. She always was on me brushing my hair. And this is where I went through a phase of time where I wasn't even going to brush my hair in my young 20s. I'm being rebellious here. Like, no parent is here to tell me to
Yes.
brush my hair. I'm not going to brush my hair. And then I woke up the next morning after a photo session and was like scratching my head, and there's a freaking tick back there. And it's like, had I brushed my hair, I would have found it. So joke's on me, right? But
Wow.
I learned at that point, okay, Mandy, you still need to brush your hair.
In your hair though.
Like,
Oh
yeah, it
my
was like in my
gosh.
scalp. It was in my scalp. And had I brushed my hair, I would have found it. But it's my funny, ironic story about me trying to be rebellious because my mom always nagged me about brushing my hair. She
That
does know that story. We've laughed about that. And so, anyways, like, we even doing for our kids, like, one thing that I know that I was doing with my oldest is I constantly was doing things for him, but the belief that was then created was he's not capable. I mean, even so much as I pack his lunch, pack his book bag, and then walk him to the front door and unlock the door for him, open the door for him, and then he would go out to the bus. And one day I'm doing this and he's like, "Mom, I can unlock the door." And I was like, "Oh, whoa, I am really doing too much for you. I see that now. Thank you for that wake up call." But we don't want to talk poorly against our parents. They were doing the best that they
Mhm.
could with what they had. And
Yeah.
I very much acknowledge that. But it also is important to acknowledge that even in doing their best, sometimes there are beliefs created for us that we have to overcome. And it can take a long time to see that.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm not sure how old you are, and I think it's rude to ask a woman how old she is.
I'm 31.
Oh, I love that. So, oh my gosh. So you had this massive awakening in your Saturn in return. Have you heard of a Saturn in return?
No.
Saturn in return happens between 28 and 30.
Okay.
And basically, what happens is this is woo woo. I don't know if you'll
Okay.
follow me. Saturn returns to the location it was at your birth. And what the common theme is, and sometimes it's more dramatic for others, and sometimes it's a little more subtle, but it's almost like the foundation falls out from under you because you have to build a whole new foundation.
Well, that's what it felt like. Okay. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, your foundation fell out, but it's because there was something new and more beautiful to come in
Yeah.
its place. And still learn from all of those experiences. Like, I think it's important not to knock those experiences. It made you who you are. It brought you to where you are in your journey. And you're so creative. And I want to ask you about your healing journey. Like, what has been, and you probably have many things, but what has been the thing that has helped you find yourself?
Oh my
Maybe I
goodness.
want to ask if it was your photography because I loved
Oh.
your selfie thing that you did. Your
Oh, thank that. Yeah, that actually was very oddly transformative. I didn't mean for that. So what happened with the selfie situation was my kids and I both got COVID like twice, like back to back. And during, when all that stuff was going on, if somebody within your household got COVID, you were on lockdown. I think it was 30 days each time. So the kids were like, I essentially had to homeschool the kids, and I was running my business at the time as well. And I don't know if it's because of where we live. We live in like a really rural part of town, but there was nothing online. Like they literally, whenever the kids had to stay home for a month, they would give me a pack of papers like this, and I would have to teach them from that. And I'm like, this is absolutely bonkers. We're going to do something fun with this. So I wanted to do something creative. And I asked people, friends on Instagram, give me one word. I don't care what it is. And words would come in like mirror or spoon. Cattywampus was one of them. And I would have to create pictures out of them. And because I was, naturally in my era of healing and all of that, I didn't want to just put out random pictures. I would think, okay, what is my first thought when I think of this word? And somehow that would turn into something a lot deeper than I intended for it. And so I would think about the word first, and I would typically write something out. And for many of the pictures, a lot of the pictures are very personal to me, and I would get very emotional with what I would write out. And then I would create the image to go with them. And something that's been very healing for me, for not just that portrait series, but just pictures I've taken in general, is whenever I go back to look at them, and I will always remember, there's always some kind of core memory attached to every single picture I've ever taken. And I can remember who I was in that moment, how I felt, what I was thinking, what I was feeling that day. And I think about where I was then versus where I am now, and what I've learned along the way. And, just reminiscing on that season of my life. And it's given a lot of encouragement. It's also given me a lot of grace for the different versions of me that I've been, because in those pictures, especially the self-portraits, there were certain versions of me that I was in that picture, and certain things that I hadn't learned yet. And
Yeah.
a lot of those pictures were born out of grief. And one thing that I realized, they say about artists is a lot of the times, if an artist is creating a lot, it's out of sadness or depression or just deep feeling in general. And if they're
Mhm.
not creating a lot, then they're not feeling a lot. And so I created a lot then. And so, a lot of those pictures that nobody knows, but there's a lot of pictures that I took or created that was after some type of heartbreak, whether I was dating somebody or I was feeling some extra amount of grief. And so they stick to me now today when I look back at them.
I love that. I think it's a good reminder because we don't like to take pictures of ourselves. Sometimes a lot of people, I mean, maybe not everybody takes a selfie, but no, I'm talking about really set that camera up and take some pictures of yourselves, because you can look back and see where you were.
Mhm.
I just really, I think that's a great exercise. I think people should do that all the time. And you don't got to be a photographer to do it. Just set
Yeah.
the self timer up and take that picture, because it'll take you back there. And then to be able to look at this whole spread and see the growth that's happened. But I loved that portrait series. I was so into it. I don't know if you're still doing it at all or if it's just on a whim now, but
Thank you. I
it,
need to. I've been thinking about it lately, and I haven't picked up my camera in a while, but I do need to.
yeah, yeah. I go through those phases too where I don't pick my
Mhm.
camera up, and the next thing you know, years have passed and I'm like, whoa,
Yeah, I know. I know. We can't let that happen.
I know. I know, because it's important to get that creativity out. And people think that if they're not creative, they shouldn't be doing that. But everybody was here to create. Everybody was born to create something, create the life that you're living, or create anything. It doesn't have to be in the arts form.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Your life as a whole is a piece of art, and you're creating
Yeah.
it day by day.
Yeah. I know you shared last night too, this little clip of your daughter. You have a Scarlet.
Yeah.
We both have a Scarlet.
No.
And oh my gosh, her little words that were just flowing. I could feel her passion. And I know where she probably gets it from, you. But I am curious, like, how your kids and maybe your daughter in particular, because I don't like to push boys aside. I think they're very important and everybody's about female empowerment and I am too, but I don't like knocking the boys at the same time. Like
Yeah.
what was the and this might be too personal of a question, but like what were the thoughts that you were having when you were in this shift of needing to make this change, this big life change?
Mm.
Both of your kids were probably very much in the forefront of your mind.
No, they were actually one of my biggest motivating factors, I mean, honestly, for both leaving and staying, because that's that's hard when you build a family together and you want to protect your kids, and that, when it comes to divorce, the kids aren't choosing that. And you are, or me, I was literally tearing down their life by my choice and not by theirs. And that was something that I had a lot of guilt over. So if I was going to make that decision, it had to be in their best interest as well. And there was just a part of me that knew, for starters, I am not going to be able to be their best mom or give them their best childhood if I stay in this. I don't know what it looks like outside of it, but I just knew that they needed more. And the other thing that I think about, and I especially think about while I'm dating, is because kids will, as they say, they don't do as you say, they're going to do as you do. And I always have this thought, is this person that I'm dating, or, whatever the past that I was in, is this somebody that I can see my daughter with? Or is this the
Mhm.
type of man that I can see my son becoming? Because they're going to follow, they don't even realize that they're going to follow in those footsteps, but they will. And so I have to make sure that whatever path I put them on, or that whatever path that I'm on and they're following along with me, is one that I would be proud of them following in the same path in the future. So that was definitely, and I'm not going to lie, I don't just encourage people to have a divorce. I feel like divorce, especially on social media, can be pretty glorified, and how, just the transformation that comes out of it. But people don't talk about the grief that follows you. Honestly, I don't even know if the grief is ever going to go away for me personally.
So one thing, I don't know where I heard it. I heard it somewhere a long time ago, is that a lot of times we don't want to end a marriage because we don't want to do that to our kids. But the question is, but would you want this for your kids? Like, would you want your daughter to be in this relationship? Would you
Yeah.
want your son to be in this relationship? And if the answer is no, then you do have to really consider that. Really consider that. And it's hard because, yeah, going from a family unit to a two-parent, two different households is difficult, is
Yeah.
so difficult. But would you want them to stay in that relationship? If you were looking at them as adults, how would you want them to be? And if it's no, that's important.
Yeah. My favorite saying to keep in mind is that you have to choose your hard. And there's not anything in this life that is easy. Everything is going to be, it's going to be hard, whether it's a healthy relationship, a bad relationship, whether it's, going to the gym and getting healthy, or having an unhealthy lifestyle and eating McDonald's every day and facing the repercussions. No matter what decision you make, hard is going to follow along, but you have to choose the hard that is worth fighting for. And that just also just goes into building and creating your life. And you don't realize that every single day you are making some type of decision to create your life in some way. And, you are choosing whether you see it or not. And so, something that's so important that I've realized in the past 2 years is learning how to be self-aware so that you are intentional with every single decision that you make. And that is, that's parenting. It's difficult because any decision that you make also involves them and where their life ends up and the patterns that they pick up. And that's been a journey on its own for sure. But I've also realized, how we talked about our childhoods and our parents did the best for us, but you still come out with some kind of wound. We all come out with some kind of wound from our childhood. And I've come to accept that my kids will be wounded somehow by me. There's going to be something that I've done in their childhood that they will carry on into their adulthood. So the best thing that I can do as a mom is at least equip them with the ability to think for themselves and trust themselves and have confidence in the decisions that they make. If I'm not being confident in my decisions that I make in my life, how can I expect them to do the same? I may not make the best decisions, but, or for myself or for them, but I want to at least be an example of just having the confidence to do what's best for you.
Yeah. Well, and two, what you just said, we cannot completely protect them from all of the things that are going to happen in life. And they definitely will come through childhood and into adulthood realizing some things that were actually hard for them that we might not even see ourselves. I think the best thing that we can do is be okay with them saying what you did hurt me and
Yeah.
holding space for them and saying, like, please know that if something comes up for you, some sort of memory, and it doesn't feel good, you are welcome to tell me. And I will not justify. I will sit and hold space, and I will try my hardest to help you heal through that. But when they come to us and it's like, well, you're remembering that wrong, or that's not how that went, which I'm also guilty of saying, because I have a child that does remember things, and I'm like, maybe that's not how that played out. But you can't say it like that to them, because that's only even more hurtful. It's like, now you're invalidating how I feel.
Yeah.
And I do try to help them see different perspectives and understand, like, I've always done the best I could with what I had. And what I had in the beginning was Nanny 911 and this idea that spanking was how you raised your kids. And now I have this idea that it's actually better to have conversations and teach them how to feel through their emotions and not push them away. And I hate that there's such a huge contrast from one child to the next. But we all do the best we can with what we have when we have it. And you're right. You got to choose your heart. I love that too. I love that saying too. Everything's hard. Which hard do you want to choose today? And life just really flies by, doesn't it? And it's like, you don't realize, like, a month has passed and you've just created this whole reality for yourself. And being intentional is so important. I do love that you said that too. So right now, though, I want to hear about what you're doing now, because I love following you and you share all these things. So what are you doing now with work and life in general? Like, let me hear it.
So what I'm doing now, working for a sewing company, learning how to sew because it's part of my job requirement. And that's just, again, something that excites me because I'm just here to do all the things that life has to offer. If I end up one day having to learn how to tame a lion, I'm here for it because why not? One day I'm not going to exist and I'll try it once. So I'm doing that, and I'm traveling. So one of the things that I like to do is obviously set the intention for each year. And I have a word for each year. And my word for this year was experience. And that is in big, small things. And I would ask myself, is this the experience that I want to have right now in this moment? If the answer is yes, I'm all in. And so that's kind of what's led to certain things that I'm doing in my life right now. I also wrote myself, I have it right over there, a letter to myself that says on the envelope 32nd birthday, which is in December. And I have in there, I wrote out how this year was going to go, and almost like it had already happened. And a lot of, I know that some of the things in there is like traveling and stuff. Also, something that was in there was, this is so weird. This is like so random, but I wrote in there that, I spoke at an event, and literally a couple days later, somebody came after I wrote that. Somebody asked me if I could speak at their event. And I've traveled so much in just the past few months. It's insane. So that's what I'm doing. I'm basically just here living. One of the things that I think that, well, I guess I can dive into this. One of the things that I'm not doing, and this is something that I'm still trying to heal from and not heal from, but heal into, I guess, rather, is dating. That is a very strange, sticky season for me in this moment. And I think that I just have this feeling that in the next year, it's going to be one of the most enlightening things for me. I can just feel it because I've already worked so hard on building up myself and being confident in who I am and my personality and what I wear every day and what I choose to do with my life. And I've worked so hard on that. And the next kind of level in my life, I think that I'm going to be entering into at some point is finding my person again. And I've done that since my divorce. I've dated, and like I said earlier, it just wasn't. That was a mess. That was scary. And I'm so glad. I remember thinking, I'm like going off 10 different tangents, but I remember thinking while I was dating, like I would become so attached to anybody that I was dating, and I would just be so hopeful that this was it. This was it. But I
Mm.
would also have one foot out the door at the same time. Like I would want it and I'd be scared. I'd want it and I'd be scared. And then I would be so devastated when it didn't work out. And it would always, I look back being self-aware now, and it would never work out because I was so fixated on being in love with somebody else and them loving me. I had no clue that one of the whole one of the only ways to have a healthy relationship is to also fall in love with yourself. And I was
Hmm.
missing that the entire time. And once I finally figured that out, I've actually been on a dating hiatus for like 5 months, and I've been doing just that and falling in love with myself and in love with my life. And, so I think that that's my next pivot whenever, I feel like I'm open to that, but I'm not out there doing that. So, but yeah, but that's basically what I'm doing is I'm traveling and working and living and just trying my best to just be present and not thinking so much about the future or the past and just thinking about what's happening right here in this moment. So,
Yeah. Well, I love that. I feel like I hate these words, but I feel like I'm going to say them anyways. Like you're wise beyond your years. Like you figured some stuff out, you know? It probably felt like it took a long time, but it feels like you've really figured some stuff out. And I'm glad you took a dating hiatus. I am. I think that it's great that you have been giving to yourself so that you know what is going to be acceptable and what's not going to be acceptable when that time comes. Because you can't know unless you do that.
yeah.
So I think we've shared so much. I never did let you answer what your favorite healing thing was. I answered for you. What's your favorite part of like thing to do for healing?
Oh, absolutely. Hands down, it's definitely journaling. I have stacks and stacks and stacks of journals, and not just journaling, like, for one, not just a dear diary, this is my day, but I will go in there and I'm like, here's the nasty stuff. I will yell in there. And I want to make sure that I am as authentic to myself as possible. And also, I feel like it can be really easy, even if you are journaling, to be like, to not be self-aware in your thoughts. I will put all my toxicness in there. And like, this is, I posted this thing on social media because I needed attention, like I am so raw and real in there, and just and anything that's going on in my life. And I've also gone as far as putting columns in my journal and saying, okay, like this was especially when I was not very connected to myself and I was going through therapy, and I was like, I'm just acting on impulse all the time. And I'm not, my life isn't going the way that I feel like it needs to because I'm just so impulsive with my emotions. And I have to hone this in and figure out what is going on. So I would write down the action, and then I would write down, okay, let's dig a little deeper. What did I feel? What was the result of that? What happened? Did we get in an argument? Did he ghost me? Did, or even like with my kids, whatever. So I would write down what it was, how it made me feel, what the consequence of that was. And then looking at all of that, I would dig even deeper and think, let's backtrack. What led up to me feeling that way? And oftentimes with every single thing, I started to find a theme in my journal. And I would go back, well, 24 hours this before this happened. A week before that, this happened. And I would go even deeper. This is probably way out there, but it was very helpful. But I would always go back to my childhood, and it would end
Yeah.
up being this thematic thing that, it's like, oh, this thing that happened in my childhood is something that is carried into, every situation, not every situation, but a lot of the situations in my life. And so doing that helped me to become very self aware. And even if, I would start to feel those familiar feelings of anxiety or frustration or whatever it was that I wrote about in my journal, when I was feeling it after practicing this in my journal for so long, I would be able to recognize that feeling in that moment and stop and go ahead and just quickly backtrack. Where is this coming from? Why am I feeling this way? And then logically think through my next steps instead of acting on impulse. And that has helped me to just become way more peaceful in my life. And so, journaling, I do that with both journaling, physically writing, and also something that I've done in the past probably 9 months is I will video record myself on my phone, and I have an album in my phone of just, just a journal, just journal thoughts. And the key to my growth has been not just writing it all out, but going back every 3 months or so and rereading it or re-listening to it, because most of the time I have grown from whatever that feeling is. I've learned a whole lot, and I'm able to connect more dots, not being in that feeling anymore and being in a more logical mindset. And that's just grown me so much and helped me to become, I use the word self-aware a lot, but that's really
It's
what
true.
it boils
Yeah.
down to.
Oh man, that was good. Let me just tell you, have you ever heard of the law of entanglement?
No.
Okay, it's like where something becomes tied to something else, and no matter how far time, there's no
Oh,
time and space, it stays there. So, like, you are basically untangling all of these things that were stuck to you. It's like these cords that connect to a situation or a person or a thing. And hell yeah, it goes back to childhood. It always goes
yeah.
back to
It's
childhood because that's when our belief system is created and the most impactful things happen in life because we don't have the words or the awareness or the things. So it just becomes what is, right? It's our core belief. So if somebody told you you looked stupid wearing something one day, then that becomes your belief. Like if I wear that, I'm always, it's not true. It was just their opinion. So
right.
you very much did some really good work there. And I'm sure I need to go back and look at my journals too. I want to know where you learned it. Did somebody teach you to do that, or did you just intuitively start doing that?
I I want to say I started intuitively doing that. I mean, there's definitely a lot of things that I've learned because when I was really in like the thick of my healing, I was so ready to just get away from my old life as much as possible that I would absorb all of this information, different speakers, or, I was in therapy and things like that. But really dissecting my life was me, I think, just being so worried that I would end up in the life that I was again. And I was just so on fire to be intentional and to fix it. Almost like, somebody who like fixes computers for a living and the computer breaks down. They're like, I have to fix this. That's how I felt about my life. And I was like, I have to, the only way that I know how to do this is to just literally dissect everything. And it came to a point where I was seeing my second therapist and I was doing this, and I would come into my therapy appointment every week and I'd say, Donald, I figured this out and I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And it would mostly just be me talking about the things that like, I'm like dissecting. I almost felt like, I don't know, Einstein with the crazy hair at the moment, just like in a laboratory. And he's like, this is great, Alex, and it was, I don't know, it was a funny time. You had to be there. But anyways, yeah, I think it came out of desperation. And that actually was a whole other part of my healing journey where I had to realize that it's okay to not take in knowledge constantly and to just be for a minute. And so that was a whole other side to it because I took it to an extreme just out of fear. And it definitely got my like desperation to heal became an unhealthy pattern at one point. And so this last half of my healing. So I'm grateful for those times because obviously I've learned a lot, but I'm not stuck in that kind of momentum anymore. I'm really just being with what I've learned since then. But
Girl, that was fire too. What? You just got it all. I'm telling you, because yeah, you can get way too sucked into consuming and listening and doing all these workshops and following all these people and reading all these books. But wait a second, you're still taking in other people's words. What does your own intuition say? And actually, like, even on a small scale, I notice this within my in-person sessions. I would do their energy session and they would come out and then I would share everything that intuitively came through for me. And I realized I'm not giving them an opportunity to listen to their own intuition. So I actually started putting paper next to them. And like, before you even leave this room, I want you to journal everything that just came up to you in this meditation. And then we can talk about it. Because otherwise my voice becomes the voice in their head versus their own. And yeah, you got to have your own voice in your head.
Yes.
Sometimes we need that cheerleader, which I love to do. I love that you were a cheerleader, by the way, even if you didn't want to be. I guarantee you liked cheering people on.
Yeah, I did. I like
That's
to
the
be
part that I
around.
liked. Yeah. Yeah. But I've had people like have said like, it was your voice in my head that I heard this and then I made this move, but it's like, no, no, no. You listen to your own intuition and you have to remember that it's your inner voice is the one that matters. No matter what I say, no matter what any guru says, we can learn and absorb, but then ultimately you've got to check in and see what's right for you because only you know that. Only you know that. And as you're sitting here describing this experience through your journaling and diving in, I can just only imagine this butterfly who's been in this cocoon and she's slowly just breaking it down to bloom and blossom and have these beautiful wings. And that's what I imagined as you were sharing. I feel like there's probably another better analogy in there. But that's what I saw when you were saying is like, man, this girl was really just becoming exactly who she was supposed to be. And you couldn't have done that if you didn't dive in like you did. So like we said earlier, there's no wrong paths.
Yeah.
It's totally okay that you went down that rabbit hole and stayed in that healing space for so long. But
Yeah.
and then to come back up and say, okay, now I'm just gonna be. And that's when divine gets to take over and lead you where you're supposed to be. I believe anyway.
Yeah.
And you probably never imagined yourself working for a sewing company.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, that came out of my photography business was, just you put in you people think that, well, I can't speak for people. That's not right of me, but you think that if you start like a photography business that you can just pick up the camera and take pictures and make money. But there's so much that goes into it, so many hours, and I just wasn't profiting what I needed to. And so I, was searching for jobs online and I had interviews with people and I had applied to a lot of jobs and I was so discouraged because I wasn't getting hired for anything. I wasn't getting second interviews or even first interviews. And I remember the day that I got hired, I almost didn't even show up because I had been turned down by so many people. And this sewing company, it's a 45-minute commute. So I was thinking in my head, like, I don't want to drive 45 minutes just to be turned down by another business. And it was also one of just kind of like this shot in the dark kind of places because it's such a random job that I'm like, I don't know how to sew. I don't, why would I even apply for this? But I was so desperate in finding something because my money was dwindling. And I, again, I almost didn't show up. And one of the reasons that almost didn't show up that day is because in Clarksville, there was some kind of massive water leak, like a pipe burst or something. And so the schools were shut down. So my kids had to stay home from school that day. And I was like, I don't have a babysitter because it was last minute. Like I had no babysitter. I didn't know what to do with the kids. And I'm like, well, I'm just not going to go because they're not going to hire me anyway. And then a friend volunteered to take them. And I was like, I guess, whatever. And I took the kids and I said, this is my last hurrah. And I remember the moment that I walked in, I felt so much peace and I felt like I was at home with my family.
Oh,
And they hired me. I had just pulled back up at home and they had called me and hired me. They hired me with a $3 raise. I mean, everything just worked out so beautifully. And it's been I've had so much fun working there for the past 5 months. And I almost didn't even go that day. So
hey, that's experience. You had an experience there. Your
I had an
word.
experience. Yes.
Well, I love it. You do social media for them too, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're such an asset. I believe all those other places turned you down probably because that's where you were supposed to be, is with the
Yeah.
sewing company. But you're such an asset. And I think any business owner would be lucky to have you on their team.
Thank you.
I know I would love to have you. I wish you were closer to me.
Oh, this would, man, if we could just talk all the time, that'd be awesome.
I know. I love
Do
it.
podcasts every day.
I love picking your brain. I love hearing from you. And I hope that we can find a way. I believe the paths will cross. And I think that's the thing. So before we actually started officially recording, I was sharing with Alex that I have wanted to talk to her about artwork for the podcast and things like that. And I just hadn't reached out for one reason or the other. But I think it's also because I just trust that paths will cross right when they're supposed to. And I believe that this was great. So we haven't even had a conversation, you and I. Like, what? I don't know that we've actually ever talked other than back and
Yeah.
forth on stories.
Yeah. I don't think so.
So funny.
Oh, wild. Life is funny.
I
It's my favorite.
know. Well, you follow somebody and you get to know them. And even if we don't get on a phone or see each other in person and have a conversation, it's like, it makes it, there's just some people it's such a natural ease to have a back and forth conversation with. And I
Yeah.
knew that. I was so willing to record a podcast with you, just knowing that it would flow. Well, I am so grateful that you came and shared, because it doesn't matter if somebody writes a post and posts a picture on it's on your terms, but to be able to come over here and share your parts of your divorce and your healing journey, like that takes bravery and courage. And I know somebody who needs to hear that is going to hear it. Just the right person. I always believe that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so thank you so, so much for being vulnerable and sharing all of that with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Amanda. This has been really fun. I love this. And I love, like I said earlier, I love what you're doing. And I'm just grateful that you're spending your time and energy to help other people, whether you know them or not. So I think it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, thank you for saying that too. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. I want to go ahead and finish us out with some of my takeaways from our conversation today. And also, I want to share this. I realized when I was editing that I forgot to ask her for her big piece of golden advice. But, she had so many good things to say in that. I'm sure you were able to take away something phenomenal. And one thing we were discussing after we finished recording was how good of a co-parenting situation they have now. That her and her ex-husband actually get along great to work together for these kids. She was sharing that ultimately her biggest turning point in that situation was getting out of victim mode, and she had to stop expecting him to love her better when it was an inside job. So with that, let me hit you with my takeaways. Number 1, it's okay to change your mind and do lots of different things. I did look up her chart afterwards, her human design chart, and she's not a manifesting generator actually, but she is a generator and meant to listen to her hell yeses and her hell no's, which is in the gut. She feels that in her gut. So feeling it in her body is what's correct. And when she was sharing that, I was really lighting up because yes, you got to listen to your body. You stop thinking through your decisions. You got to get into your body to know what's correct for you. We've all been conditioned to think through things, but actually that's not true. You want to feel how it feels within yourself. Number 2, sometimes it's a big transformational moment, But it's also baby steps, small steps. It starts with just knowing that you want something different. For her, it was realizing that she just wanted to be happier. She didn't want to feel the way she was feeling anymore. And so, we do have to sometimes make big, drastic moves, but a lot of times it starts small. So don't discount that small step. Start with the one, and then the next will come in front of you, and then the next will fall in front of you, and just keep following that path. Number 3, no one is perfect, and our kids will come out with some sort of wound. Now, I've talked about this on another podcast with another guest, and it seems to come up as a theme, actually, because it's probably been one I've talked about with several guests, but we are bound to screw our kids up in some way, whether we want to or not. We can love them as much as we do and still inflict some sort of wound on them. And the key is to help them heal from those and being open to hearing what might have happened that hurt them. Number 4, your kids will follow in your footsteps. She said, we say, do as I say, not as I do, but really they're going to do what you do. So honoring who you are is also teaching them to honor themselves. They will be with the person that they have represented for them. And so asking yourself, would I want this for them? I love how she said, is this someone I would want my daughter with? Is this someone I would want my son to aspire to be? Those are powerful questions. Number 5, you get to choose your hard. You're going to be faced with difficulty no matter what situation you're in. Eating healthy is hard when you have to find the good food and wash it and all the things. But also, eating really bad food is also hard because guess what? Then you're going to be sitting and waiting in a doctor's office trying to figure out the answers to why you're not feeling well. Choose your hard. Staying in a marriage is hard sometimes. You have to be able to navigate and work through the struggle. But also leaving is hard because now you have to work through and navigate that new world. Choose your hard. Number 6. Now, she didn't say it like this, but I'm saying it to you like this. Ask, believe, receive. So Alex wrote a letter to herself in the beginning of the year, laying out all the things she'd hoped to have happen this year. And many of those things have. This is the power of manifesting. And you have to first speak it into existence. You have to first see that it is a possibility. It doesn't matter if you know how it's going to happen. What matters is that you say, this is what I want. This is what I want to experience. And then you're going to call that in. There is a lot more to that manifesting stuff, but I'm going to talk about that in another episode. Number 7, make sure you reflect on your growth. I love how she shared about looking back on her journal entries and her pictures and really reflecting every 3 months on how far she'd come. I think we forget to do that. We journal, but we don't stop and go look back. And I'll do this from time to time, actually, because I'm trying to find words or figure out a topic for the podcast. So it causes me to go back and reflect on my journals, and that's been amazing. But making it an actual practice and part of your routine could be really impactful. So go back, go look at your pictures from a year ago, go read your journal entries from a year ago, because you're going to really see how much you've grown. And number 8, listen to your intuition. You can do all the learning. You can take in all that information. Go to therapy, hire life coaches, learn about human design, learn about all these different things. But at some point, you have to take pause and allow yourself to just be. Just be. Just live your life and just be. And also take the time to listen to your own inner voice. It's so important. You know deep down within you what is correct for you. But if you only ever hear everybody else telling you, you're not going to be able to listen to that voice. So make sure that in all your learning and all you're doing, which never stop, we're forever students, but make sure you take the time to just be with yourself so that you can really, truly decide what's right for you. All right, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. If you found value in this episode, please share it. You never know who else might need to hear it. And if you want to give either Alex or myself a shout out on Instagram, feel free. My handle is at lifewithmandy_, and hers is, so she's at _Alex Sumner, SUMNER. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for being here. And as always, please remember, you are loved, you are valued, and you are appreciated. Bye now.